Protheans and the Beacon. The Beacon was a Prothean artifact unearthed on the Alliance colony of Eden Prime. Its resemblance to the Prothean databanks recovered on Mars provoked immediate interest from the Alliance and the Citadel Council. It proved to be a solid-state data storage device, part of a galaxy-spanning comm network similar to the modern extranet. Intact Prothean Paleon technology is rare. The Beacon seemed to promise another quantum leap of technology akin to the discovery of the Mass Effect drive and relays. Unfortunately, the Beacon also drew the attention of the rogue Spectre Saren Arterius, and his synthetic allies, the Geth. A dawn raid by his flagship Sovereign resulted in hundreds of civilian casualties. The beacon was badly damaged. The motives behind the attack are still being investigated. Wow, even after 2 years? Well, at least we know what happened. During the recovery operation, the beacon fired a pulse of energy at the executive officer of the Alliance frigate Normandy. Lieutenant Commander Shepard survived and appears to have suffered no ill effects. Afterwards, the beacon fell inert. The mechanism appears to be dead. Okay, that's interesting. Let's move on to the cipher. The Prothean beacon downloaded its knowledge into Commander Shepard on Eden Prime, causing confusing dreams and visions. While the imagery is becoming clearer with time, the meaning of the beacon communication remains elusive. It has been suggested that Prothean data recording is highly dependent on a certain point of view, what Carl Jung described as a collective unconscious. The cipher needed to comprehend the images implanted in Shepard's mind in the cultural knowledge of a Prothean, the archetypes, biological instincts, and common experiences universal to the race. Since the Protheans have been dead for millennia, it may be impossible to acquire this cipher. Moving on to data disks. Despite all the evidence confirming the existence of the Protheans, little is known about their culture and society. From time to time, dig sites will yield new clues, but after 50,000 years of decay, little of value is unearthed. Recent research has focused on the discovery of Prothean data disks. On their own, they are frail and rarely found in one piece. Occasionally, however, an intact disk will be discovered within a console or reading device. To date, over 36 disks have been recovered, and a few of those have been restored to the point where researchers can begin analyzing them. Though it may be some time before scientists discover a way to transfer the data off the data disks, they are currently considered the most tangible leads for learning more about the Prothean culture. Okay, so this is very interesting because we gathered those data disks, right? And yeah, cool. I like what I see here. The fact that our gathering missions made sense, even though they were annoying. So that's very cool. Okay, moving on to Mars ruins. After 20 years of manned research, outposts, and nearly a century of robotic exploration, the European Space Agency's Lowell City became the first permanent settlement on Mars in 2103. Within a decade, the United States and China had funded permanent settlements as well. Had founded. The South Polar region of Promethe Planum developed a Bermuda Triangle reputation. Satellites detected intermittent mass concentrations and magnetic field shifts. In 2148, prospectors working near Decido crater discovered an underground complex, a Prothean observation post. The odd phenomena were generated by the operation and discharge of a Mass Effect core struggling to function despite 50 millennia of neglect. Wow. Earth was electrified by the news. Humanity was univocally not alone. While courts battled over who owned the ruins, the international scientific community coordinated a massive effort to access, translate, and interpret the databanks recovered from the facility. The facility proved to be a biosciences observation post built when Homo sapiens were first evolving on Earth. While the motives of the Protheans are not certain, translated records indicate that the facility was in irregular communication with automated observation platforms in Earth orbit and on the lunar near side. The half-dozen Mass Effect spaceships found in the facility were presumably used for first-hand observation. That's very cool. Moving on to rachni. Though now extinct, the rachni once threatened every species in the Citadel space. Over 2,000 years ago, explorers foolishly opened a mass relay to a previously unknown system and encountered something never seen before or since, a species of spacefaring insects guided by a hive mind intelligence. Unfortunately, the rachni were not peaceful, and the galaxy was plunged into a series of conflicts known as the Rachni Wars. Attempts to negotiate were futile, as it was impossible to make contact with the hive queens that guided the race from beneath the surface to their toxic homeworld. The emergence of the Krogan ended the Rachni Wars. Bred to survive the harshest environments, the Krogan were able to strike at the queens in their lairs and reclaim conquered council worlds. But when Krogan fleets pressed them back to their homeworld, the rachni refused to surrender, and the Krogan eradicated them from the galaxy. Yeah, it's a sad story, but that's just the way it is. Moving on to aliens non-council races. Geth armatures. Okay. Armatures are quadruped all-terrain heavy weapons platforms akin to the armored fighting vehicles of other races. Geth being synthetic intelligences, armatures are not crude vehicles, but intelligent entities capable of independent decision-making and learning. Armatures are equipped with heavy kinetic barriers. Their main cannon, mounted on the articulated head turret, appears to be a highly efficient conventional mass accelerator. It is capable of firing in anti-personnel and anti-tank modes. Some armatures carry drones into battle, presumably for reconnaissance purposes. Others host a swarm of insect-sized repair microbots. Okay, moving on to the Keepers. When the Asari discovered the Citadel, they also discovered the Keepers, a docile, multi-limbed insect race that seemingly exists only to maintain and repair the great Prothean station. Early attempts to communicate with or study the Keepers were failures, and it is now illegal to interfere with or impede Keeper activity. Because they are completely non-threatening, Keepers have become virtually invisible to everyone else. Similarly, they seem indifferent to other species except for their tendency to help new arrivals integrate themselves into the Citadel. No matter how many Keepers die due to the old age, violence, or accident, they maintain a constant number. No one has discovered the source of new Keepers, but some hypothesize that they are genetic constructs, biological androids created somewhere deep in the inaccessible core of the Citadel itself. Okay. Moving on to Krogans and their biology. The Krogan evolved in a lethal ecology. Over millions of years, the grim struggle to survive larger predators, virulent disease, and resource scarcity on their homeworld, Tuchanka, turned the lizards into quintessential survivors. Perhaps the most telling indicator of Tuchanka's lethality is the Krogan eyes. Although they are a predator species by any standard definition, their eyes evolved to be wide set, as in Earth, prey species like deer and cattle. Krogan eyes have a 240-degree arc of vision, better suited for spotting enemies sneaking up on them for pursuit. Physically, the Krogan are nigh indestructible, with a tough hide impervious to any melee weapon short of a molecular blade. While they feel pain, it does not affect their ability to concentrate. They have multiple functioning examples of all major organs and can often survive the loss of one or two of any type. Rather than a nervous system, they have an electrically conductive second circulatory system. A Krogan can never be paralyzed. They may lose some of this fluid, but it can be replaced by the body in time. Whoa, okay, I didn't know that about them. The hump on a Krogan's back stores water and fats that help the Krogan survive lean times. Large humps are a point of pride. Being well fed implies the Krogan is a superior predator. Wow, okay. The most widely known biological feature of the Krogan is their incredible birth rate and rapid maturity. Once freed from the hostile cauldron of Tuchanka, the Krogan population swelled into a numberless horde. Only the genophage kept them from outbreeding the combined council races. Now, the rare Krogan females capable of bringing a child to term are treated like strategic resources. Warlords will trade them at diplomacy or, more frequently, fight wars over them. Yep, that's true. Moving on to the Krogan culture. The harsh Krogan homeworld conditioned the Krogan psychology for toughness just as it did the body. Krogan have always had a tendency to be selfish, unsympathetic, and blunt. They respect strength and self-reliance and are neither surprised nor offended by treachery. The weak and selfless do not live long. In their culture, looking out for number one is simply a matter of course. After their defeat in the rebellions, the very concept of Krogan leadership was discredited. Where a warlord could once command enough power to bring entire solar systems to heel and become overlord, these days it is rare for a single leader to have more than 1,000 warriors swear allegiance to him. Most Krogan trust and serve no one but themselves. This solitary attitude stems in part from a deep sense of fatalism and futility, a profound social effect of the genophage that caused Krogan numbers to dwindle to a relative handful. Not only are they angry that the entire galaxy seems out to get them, the Krogan are also generally pessimistic about their race's chances of survival. The surviving Krogan see no point to building for the future. There will be no future. The Krogan live with an attitude of kill, pillage, and be selfish, for tomorrow we die. Okay. Moving on to genophage. The genophage bioweapon was created to end the Krogan rebellions. From the start, the Krogan had overwhelmed the Council. Only timely first contact with the Turians saved the Council races. The Turians fought the Krogan to a standstill, but sheer weight of Krogan numbers indicated the war could not be won through conventional means. The Turians collaborated with the Solarians to genetically engineer a counter to the rapid breeding of the Krogan. The genophage virus gained the energy to replicate by eating key genetic sequences. Every cell in every Krogan had to be altered for the weapon to be foolproof. Otherwise, the Krogan could have used gene therapy to fix the affected tissues. Once a genophage strain could find no more genes to eat, it would starve and die, limiting spin-off mutations and contamination. This created genetic flaw is hereditary. The Solarians believed the genophage would be used as a deterrent, a position the Turians viewed as naive. Once the project was complete, the Turians mass-produced and deployed it. The Krogan homeworld, their colonies, and all occupied worlds were affected. The resulting mutation made only 1 in 1,000 Krogan pregnancies carry to term. It did not reduce fertility, but offspring viability. The rare females able to carry children to term became prizes the Krogan warlords fought brutal battles over. The Krogan are a shadow of their former glory. While the rebellions took place centuries ago, they are constantly reminded of the horror of the genophage and of their inability to counter it. The release of the genophage is still controversial, bitterly debated in many circles. Yeah, it's a sad story. It's a sad story, but I understand why they had to do it and so on, but it's a sad story. Krogan rebellions. After the Rachni War, the quick-breeding Krogan expanded at the expense of their neighbors. Warlords leveraged their veteran soldiers to seize living space while the council races were still grateful. Over centuries, the Krogan conquered world after world. There was always just one more needed. When the council finally demanded withdrawal from the Asari colony of Lucia, Krogan overlord Kredak stormed off the citadel, daring the council to take their worlds back. But the council had taken precautions. The finest STG operators and Asari huntresses had been drafted into Covert Observation Force, the Office of Special Tactics and Reconnaissance. The Spectres opened the war with crippling strategic strikes. Krogan planets went dark as computer viruses flooded the extranet. Sabotaged antimatter refineries disappeared in blue-white annihilation. Headquarters stations shattered into orbit-clogging debris, rammed by pre-placed suicide freighters. Still, this only delayed the inevitable. The war would have been lost if not for the first contact with the Turians, who responded to Krogan threats with a prompt declaration of war. Being on the far side of Krogan space from the Council, the Turians advanced rapidly into the lightly defended Krogan rear areas. The Krogan responded by dropping space stations and asteroids on Turian colonies. 3 worlds were rendered completely uninhabitable. This was precisely the wrong approach to take with the Turians. Each is first and foremost a public servant, willing to risk his life to protect his comrades. Rather than increasing public war wariness, Krogan tactics stiffened Turian resolve. The arrival of Turian task forces saved many worlds from the warlords' marauding fleets, but it took development of the genophage bioweapon to end the war. There were decades of unrest afterwards. Rogue warlords and holdout groups of insurgents refused to surrender or disappeared into the frontier systems and became pirates. Military doctrine. Traditional Krogan tactics were built on attritional mass unit warfare. Equipped with cheap, rugged gear, troop formations were powerful but inflexible. Command and control was very centralized. Soldiers in the field who saw a target contacted their commanders behind the lines to arrange fire support. Since the genophage, the Krogan can no longer afford the casualties of the old horde attacks. The battle masters are a match for any 10 soldiers of another species. To a battle master, killing is a science. They focus on developing a clean, brute force economy of motion that exploits their brutal strength to incapacitate enemies with a swift single blow of overwhelming power. This change of focus from mass unit warfare to maximal efficiency has increased employment demand in the fields of security and muscle for hire. Due to the unsavory reputation of the Krogan, most of these jobs are on the far side of the law, of course. Battle masters are not spit and polish, but they do believe in being well armed and equipped, preferably with a gun for each limb. They are callous and brutal, but methodical and disciplined. They use any means at their disposal to achieve their goals, no matter how reprehensible. Hostage-taking and genocide are acceptable means to ensure a quiet occupation with few Krogan casualties. The Krogan serving with Saren's forces appear to be returning to the old style of mass attritional combat. They also work in close cooperation with supporting Geth units, who fill the roles occupied by combat drones in other armies. Biotics are rare among the Krogan. Those that exist are viewed with suspicion and fear. The Krogan see this aura of fear as a useful quality in an officer and often promote them. Combat drones and other high-tech equipment are likewise in short supply. Okay, let's move on to the Quarians and their economy. The migrant fleet has little economic base, operating in a state of perpetual hand-to-mouth. While Quarian ships include light manufacturing and assembly plants, they lack heavy industries such as refining and shipbuilding. The fleet has tankers for water purification and oxygen cracking, but the space-intensive nature of agriculture limits food production. A single disaster could destroy one fragile balance. could destroy the fragile balance. Sorry, it seems I'm missing words here, or skipping them. The Quarians earn income in creative ways. Because the government is obliged to provide food, water, air, and medical support for every individual, the Conclave strategically determines the course of the fleet to bring in resources and income. A species who suspects the migrant fleet is heading towards their space often offers a gift of surplus starships, fuel, and resources to convince the Conclave to alter course. As the fleet passes through a system, swarms of mining vessels work over asteroids for metals and siliceous materials and cometary bodies for water, ice, and organics. Quarian miners are adept at locating and stripping mining space-borne resources. This sparks conflict with corporations already working the system. Large mining concerns spend millions on lobbyists and public relations, portraying the Quarians as locusts devouring the resources of a system before moving on. The greatest asset of the Quarians is their rarefied skills. Most are experienced miners. Due to their life of perpetual salvage and repair, they are skilled engineers and technicians. More than once, the very corporations that lobby against the Quarians have made backroom deals with the fleet, arranging for skilled Quarians to fill space engineering jobs that other species would demand higher wages for. Quarians are widely hated among the working classes. The Quarians are coming to take our jobs is a common response to the fleet's approach. You have no idea how familiar this sounds. Okay, Quarians and the government. Due to the Quarians' precarious existence and the need to enforce strict rationing, government is somewhat autocratic. The migrant fleet's operations are directed by the Admiralty, a board of 5 military officers who are advised by a legislative body called the Conclave. Each vessel in the fleet has the right to send representatives to the Conclave aboard the flagship. The number of representatives is based on crew size. Larger clans with bigger ships and more votes form the cores of political blocs. Opposition comes from the Outriders Coalition. Opposition comes from the Outriders Coalition, with delegates from thousands of smaller ships. The Admiralty defers to the Conclave's decision in most circumstances. However, if all 5 members agree that a Conclave decision jeopardizes the survival of the fleet and cannot get the Conclave to address their concerns, they have the right to summarily overturn the legislative decision. After the Admiralty uses this extraordinary power, they must resign. If the Admiralty does not step down after using their veto, the rest of the military is obliged to arrest them. Cool. Each ship captain has authority over his vessel, but is advised by the elected civilian council, just as the Admiralty is advised by the Conclave. This relationship may range from cooperation to polite tolerance to outright hostility, but any captain who overrules his council without good reason is relieved of command by the Admiralty. Many Quarian ships are owned by clans who pool their resources to purchase used vessels from private sellers. Large ships are prestigious for big, rich clans, but a small ship means status for a small clan with enough personal wealth to afford a private vessel. Clan vessel captains are not subject to dismissal by the Admiralty. Abusive captains are a family problem if they do not disrupt the operations of the fleet. So basically you deal with them inside your own family. Law and defense of the Quarians. Although the Conclave established civil war law much as any planet-based democracy, enforcement and trials are more unique. After the flight from the Geth, there were few constables to police the millions of civilians aboard the fleet, to the Navy parceled out Marine squads to maintain the Navy parceled out Marine squads to maintain order and enforce the law. Today, Quarian Marines have evolved training and tactics akin to civilian police, but remain adept at combat in the confined spaces of a starship and fully under the command of the military. Once taken into custody, the accused is brought before the ship's captain for judgment. While the ship's council may make recommendations, tradition holds that the captain has absolute authority in matters of discipline. Most are lenient, assigning additional or more odious maintenance tasks aboard the ship. Persistent recidivists are accidentally left on the next habitable world. This practice of abandoning criminals on other people's planets is a point of friction between the Quarians and the systems they pass through. Captains rarely have another choice. With space and resources at a premium, supporting a non-productive prison population is not an option. In the early years, many Quarian freighters were armed and used as irregular privateers. Civilian ships still show a strong preference for armament, making them unpopular targets for pirates. Though they have rebuilt their military, there are still mere hundreds of warships to protect tens of thousands of ships. The Quarian Navy follows strict routines of patrol and takes no chances. If the intent of an approaching ship can't be ascertained, they shoot to kill. Cool. I like their approach. Pilgrimage. When Quarians of the migrant fleet reach young adulthood, they must leave their birth ship and find a new crew to accept them as a permanent resident. To prove themselves, they must recover something of value. This is offered to their prospective captain as proof that they will not be a mere burden on the resources of the ship. This process is called the pilgrimage. Stripped of ritual, the pilgrimage is merely an attempt to maintain genetic diversity within the small, relatively isolated population bases that make up the migrant fleet. If the young stayed and married within their birth vessel, the risk of inbreeding would increase sharply. Quarians are surgically fitted with their various immunity-boosting implants in preparations for leaving on pilgrimage. Having grown up within the sterile, controlled environments of the migrant fleet ships, Quarians have virtually no natural immune system. And last but not least, their religion. The ancient Quarians practiced ancestor worship. Even after abandoning faith for secularism, Quarians continued to revere the wisdom of elders. As time passed and technology advanced, they inevitably turned their knowledge to preserving the personalities and memories of the elderly as computer virtual intelligences. These recordings became a repository of knowledge and wisdom, stored in the central databank and available through any extranet connection. They held no illusions that this was a form of immortality. Like all virtual intelligences, their electronically preserved ancestors were not truly sapient. This was considered a surmountable problem. Sapience could surely be reduced to simple mathematics. The Quarians began exhaustive research into creating artificial intelligence so they could learn to escape the bounds of mortality and give their ancestral records true awareness. Unfortunately, the life the Quarians created did not accept the same truths they did. The Geth destroyed the ancestor databanks when they took over. In the centuries since they evacuated their homeworld, most Quarians have returned to religion in various forms. Many believe that the rise of the Geth and the destruction of their ancestors were chastisement for arrogantly forsaking the old ways and venerating self-made idols. Others have a more philosophical outlook, believing that their race was indeed arrogant, but no supernatural agency lay behind the Geth revolt. Rather, the Quarians' actions wrought their own doom. Either way, every Quarian would agree that their own hubris cost them their homeworld. Yeah, that's true. Okay, moving on to aliens, non-sapient creatures, and we have the Husks. After the Geth secure a location, they round up and impale dead and living bodies on mechanical spikes. The spikes rapidly transform these victims into withered husks, extracting water and trace minerals and replacing them with cybernetics. The cybernetics reanimate the lifeless flesh and tissue, transforming the bodies into mindless killing machines. Some Alliance soldiers refer to the husk-generating spikes as dragon's teeth, a reference to the mythological berserkers who sprang up from the earth wherever the teeth of the dragon Ares were planted. Dragon's teeth and husks bear little resemblance to other pieces of Geth technology. No one is sure why a synthetic race would bother to drain the minuscule amount of recoverable resources from an organic corpse, though the value of reusing them as shock troops is obvious. Thresher maws. Thresher maws are subterranean carnivores that spend their entire lives eating or searching for something to eat. Threshers reproduce via spores that can lie dormant for millennia, yet are robust enough to survive prolonged periods in deep space and atmospheric re-entry. As a result, thresher spores appear on many worlds spread by previous generations of space travelers. The body of a thresher never entirely leaves the ground, only the head and the tentacles erupt from the earth to attack. In addition to physical attacks, threshers have the ability to project toxic chemicals and emit bursts of infrasound as a shockwave weapon. The Alliance first encountered threshers on the colony of Akuz in 2177. After contact was lost with the Pioneer team, Marine units were deployed to investigate. The shore parties were set upon by hungry threshers and nearly the entire assault force was killed. Alliance forces recommended engaging threshers with vehicle-mounted heavy weapons. And that's what we did in the first game when we killed the thresher maws with Mako, right? Okay, moving on to Varren. Varren are omnivores with a preference for living prey. Originally native to the Krogan homeworld of Tuchanka, they are, like most life form Tuchanka, savage, clannish, and consummate survivors. They are pack hunters when vulnerable prey is readily available, and become scavengers when outnumbered or outclassed. Their supreme adaptability, vicious demeanor, and rapid breeding cycle have made them ubiquitous to dangerous pests on many worlds. Virtually everywhere the Krogan have been, Varren infestations have followed, wreak havoc with the native ecology. The Krogan have had a love-hate relationship with Varren for millennia, or alternatively fighting them for territory and embracing them as treasured companions. To this day, Krogan raise them as beasts of war. A common subgenus of Varren has metallic silver scales, leading to the rather unusual nickname of fish dogs. Nice. Well, we did encounter some Varren in Mass Effect 1. I'm very curious to see how they look now.